When you think about the word resistance, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Is it calling your representatives about a current issue? Attending a protest? Maybe leading a book club discussion or creating a new piece of art? Every day, our inboxes and social media accounts are filled with terrible news. As much as we try to take breaks and not look at what's happening, these things have an effect on us. They can cause stress and overwhelm. It's hard to focus when everything we know seems to be falling apart. In today's episode of the Poetry Lab podcast, we'll talk about resistance as a consistent practice that helps ground us and replenish. If you're feeling anxious and unsure about our current times, this episode is for you. Are you ready, poet? Let's go.
Welcome to the Poetry Lab podcast. The Poetry Lab started 11 years ago to help dedicated, self-taught, and formally trained writers find a place in their community to write, read, learn, and collaborate. We help writers tap into their craft with radical self-compassion, unlike anything you've ever seen in a creative writing classroom before. If you're a creative person trying to establish a writing practice in the real world, this podcast is designed to help you carve out the time, the courage, and the inspiration to keep writing your new shit. Are you ready, poet? Let's get into it.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of the Poetry Lab podcast. My name is Leonora Simonovis, and today I'm talking about a topic that seems to resurface every time we encounter yet another crisis: resistance. I recently came across this wonderful quote from the writer Ursula Le Guin. "We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. But then, so did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, very often in our art, the art of words." Le Guin was a woman writing in the science fiction and fantasy genres during a time when this type of literature was dominated by men. She challenged traditional ways of writing by incorporating political and social justice issues in her novels and stories, as well as gender and environmental concerns. She used her writing to promote the changes she wanted to see. It wasn't easy, but she persisted, and today her books have been translated into many different languages and are read all over the world. Today's episode will focus on how we can create space to practice resistance in our daily lives, and how this can help us develop the resilience we need, not to just survive, but to actually live our lives fully and in connection with the world and the people around us. The tools and tips I offer in this episode come from my own experience growing up in Latin America and spending my late teens and early 20s living under an authoritarian regime that turned my entire world upside down. Throughout those years, I learned that there are many ways to resist, and not all of them involve being out in the streets or doing big things. Not everyone is an activist, and not everyone is able to be one. Actions, even small ones, can create ripples in the whole structure of society and promote change. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, resistance is the act of resisting, refusing to accept or comply with something, or the power not to be affected by something, especially negatively. The word comes from the Latin resistencia, which means to stand against or to withstand. That's easy enough, right? Growing up, I don't remember a time when there wasn't a crisis going on. It usually had something to do with the government and the way one policy or another affected the economy, public transport, access to food, etc. When I needed to do a transaction either at the bank or at a government's office, I had to ask for the day off at work. Something that would take 20 minutes normally could take the whole morning for a wide variety of reasons that had to do with the endless bureaucracy, the systems being down, or something of the sort. If you asked me the details of those transactions, I can't tell you because I barely remember. What has stayed with me all this time are conversations I had with strangers, laughter, and storytelling. Those spaces were hubs for impromptu gatherings. I remember one time I walked out of a government office feeling uplifted by a conversation I had with someone about books and poetry. Like, how does that even happen? Another time, I was stuck in traffic for at least 2 hours and watched people dancing one song after another on a public bus. I almost got out of the car and joined them. Were all moments like this? No. But to be honest, I'm grateful to have lived through situations that taught me to be patient, to stay in the moment, and to remain open for whatever happened. Life was not easy during those times. There was a lot going on, and violence in the streets was not uncommon. I had family members and friends who would leave for work in the morning, hug their loved ones, and say, "I hope I make it home tonight." We all knew anything could happen, and maybe because of that, we learned to appreciate life and be grateful for what it offered, even if unexpected. We develop resilience on a day-to-day basis as we bounce back from one thing to the next. For every moment the system bogged us down, for every blackout, blockade, or unhelpful government official, there was solidarity, a shared understanding, or a helping hand whenever you least expected it. There was a sense of community. One thing I learned from my mom and her family was that there were always reasons to celebrate life. Yes, we celebrated birthdays and holidays and all kinds of important dates. But sometimes we gather around the table for a delicious home-cooked meal just because. When we spent afternoons at my grandmother's house, she served merienda, which usually consisted of some kind of cookie or pound cake served with coffee sweetened with molasses. That moment was a break in our afternoon of playing, a chance to get together at the table and to simply savor what was being offered while listening to a story or planning the next game. To this day, I make my own afternoon merienda with whatever I have available. If I feel like it, I'll bake something to go with my coffee or tea. Even that simple act of baking from scratch is a celebration of creativity and of honoring my ancestors, connecting with them and remembering. And how is this resisting, you might ask? Well, think about our day-to-day lives, the expectations of the workplace, and the amount of hours we spend doing. What happens if we hit the brakes? If we look up from our screens, take a sick day from work, and do something that feels nurturing? What happens if we do nothing? The writer Alexis Pauline Gumbs talks about listening as a way to connect with others, but also to understand where we come from and our role as artists. She says, "Part of my life's purpose is to say there is an other way for us to do this, and there are things that shall not be contained by these institutions." When I was in my 20s, I went to protests, learned slogans and chants, met with colleagues and friends to talk about taking action. I talked to people in the streets, wanting to understand why all of this oppression, violence, disappearances was happening. But all of that left me exhausted. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was only looking at one side of the situation. I was consumed by the news, so I couldn't speak without judging, feeling frustrated, angry, and unhappy. I think resistance can include all of the things I mentioned before: protesting, donating, learning slogans, but it can also be about letting go. And that means that sometimes you have to let go of the idea of what resistance looks like and find your own path. I want to offer some resistance practices I've been doing for the past few years that are meant to challenge the idea that we have to be on the move, to consume or be consumed by the media. Number one is cultivate joy. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said that sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. The way I interpret that is that we don't always have to wait for the moment when joy will come and surprise us. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. When you're settled, think of a moment in your life when you felt absolute joy. Maybe it was visiting a place you dreamed about, or seeing a loved one after a long period of time. Maybe it was adopting a puppy or a kitten or watching your children play. Let yourself be in that moment. Feel it in your bones. Smile. Practice this every day and see what happens after a couple of weeks. Another way to cultivate joy is to keep a journal of joyful daily moments. You don't have to write a whole entry about them. Just make a list. Did you have a meaningful conversation with someone? A breakthrough with a piece of writing? Did you see a beautiful bird outside while driving to work? Whatever it is, write it down. And at the end of the week, look back at all the things that brought you joy. Number 2, listen. Listening is one of those qualities that seem to be on the brink of extinction. All you have to do is look at the news. Go outside if you can, or if you're driving, open your car window. If you're taking public transport, open up your listening antennas. What are some of the things you hear? Besides the noise of the freeway or the train tracks, can you catch something underneath the surface? Notice what that is. Focus on it. What is the texture of that sound? Does it have a color? Can you imitate it? Play with it. Number 3, try something new and be willing to fail at it. Like Mary Oliver said, you don't have to be good. The idea that every single thing we do has to be the best or excellent, or whatever word you want to use, is a myth. Set aside your poems or stories for a while. Let them rest. Grab some watercolors and paint a landscape. Learn to make bread, play an instrument, sing. Be a dancer for a few minutes. Enjoy the freedom of not having to perform for anyone, of just doing the thing without having a show and tell. Have fun. Number 4, rest. We've all heard the phrase, rest is resistance, which is part of the title of a wonderful book by Tricia Hershey. I left my full-time job last year after 17 years. I was feeling exhausted and bogged down and just joyless. After the first couple of months, I began to realize how much noise there was in my life, how much moving around I did. Even on weekends, there was always something to be done, to take care of. Rest never felt like rest. So for a few months, I took the time to do just that. And little by little, I began to replenish my energy levels. Now, rest is a daily practice for me, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, whether sitting, laying down, or in a parking lot. I take a few minutes in silence to just be with myself and away from any and all responsibilities. 5, spend time with your loved ones. Whether friends or family, community is the most important thing during these difficult times. Changing your perspective and your way of engaging with the world is important, yes, but so is being a part of a collective that takes care of each other so that the whole can be healthy. In my neighborhood, when we couldn't get a hold of a food item, we'd barter with our neighbors or family members, or we bought extra for the neighbor who was ill and couldn't get out. Having each other's back is so important right now. 6, connect with the earth. Whether it's taking a walk at the local park, watching squirrels play, or caring for a new plant, it's important to remember that we are all part of a very big network of beings, human and more than human. Get your hands in the dirt, hug a tree or lay down on the ground, and breathe. Number 7, gratitude. I have a planner next to my computer with space to write things I'm grateful for. Every day around lunchtime, I take a break and write about 3 things. By the end of the week, I have a very long list that I reread, and it makes me smile. Try it. It'll lift you up. We talked about how resistance doesn't have to be about big actions, but that besides calling, donating, and protesting, there are things we can do that will help us become centered and grounded. We are not alone. We never were. Resisting is also realizing the beauty of doing something positive with others, becoming truly aware of your connection to yourself and with the world. If you want to hear a bit more about the role of the writer in difficult times, listen to episode 39 of the Poetry Lab podcast, where poet Bridgette Bianca talks about how to continue to create and not lose hope. If you liked this episode, Please give us a like and a follow and help us spread the word about our podcast by texting the link to a few creative friends. You can also find us at thepoetrylab.com/podcast. Again, I'm Leonora Simonovis, and you can find me on Instagram at Leo Simonovis or check out my website at leonorasimonovis.com. That's all for now. I'll catch you soon at the Poetry Lab.